Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has promised support in a meeting with leaders of 14 Pacific Island states in Papua New Guinea. The Indian leader arrived earlier to a special welcome from Papua New Guinea Prime Minister James Marape. Modi, in his subsequent meeting with leaders of Pacific Island states, assured cooperation in areas such as digital and space technology, climate change, and also environment protection. The meeting took place in the shadow of China's increasing engagement with the Pacific Islands economically and also in security terms. Involvement that is being seen with wariness by the United States and regional ally Australia. Modi used the moment to offer India as another partner in the region.
India stood shoulder to shoulder with its Pacific Island friends in this challenging time. Be it made in India vaccines or essential medicines, wheat or sugar, India has been helping all fellow countries according to its capabilities.
Free, open, or inclusive Indo-Pacific.
We support a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific. We respect the sovereignty and integrity of all countries.
And joining me now for more context is Dr. Jagannath Panda, head of the Stockholm Center for South Asian and Indo-Pacific Affairs. Dr. Panda, what does India want from Papua New Guinea and the other Pacific Island states?
Oh, yes. I think the region is critical to India's Indo-Pacific outlook. A lot of strategic requirements are there for India. If we notice, I think over the last 8 to 10 years, India is looking at the Pacific Island countries in terms of strategic engagement in minerals, in renewable energy, in oceanographic, and in sea and marine ecological environmental engagement. More than that, I think if we try to understand from security and strategic point of view, these island nations are critical for India's broader Indo-Pacific horizons. It complements with the Indo-Pacific policies and strategies of other countries, particularly of the United States of America and other Quad partners like Japan and Australia. So therefore, this is a critical region for India for a multiple regions.
I mean, the last time India held this Forum for Indo-Pacific Island Cooperation was way back in 2015, and now you suddenly have the third installment of this meeting. Is China the main reason for this outreach now?
Of course, China is the most significant, motivating factor for US outreach in the Pacific Island regions and also India's outreach in the Pacific Island regions. If we try to understand the Chinese strategy, under Xi Jinping, there has been a concentrated Chinese security, economic, as well as military outreach in the regions. There are countries, island chain of countries in the Pacific regions where China has established strategic key points, not only from the civil commercial point of view, but also from the military point of view. That has definitely really encouraged countries like India and US, including Japan and Australia, to rethink about their Pacific Island countries. But for India, I think you are right. After 2014 and 15, there has been a gap. And I think even though there has been few channel of official visits to the island countries by top key Indian officials visiting some of these countries in the Pacific regions, but still, I think the ministerial and the grand level of summits that was orchestrated in 2014 and 15, there has been a gap. And I think the time has come to review and reinvigorate those engagement. And I think Prime Minister Modi's visit would perfectly do that.
You know, India might want to reinvigorate ties, but truly the question needs to be asked if India actually possesses the resources, the finances, and the military strength to be able to counter Chinese influence in the region.
I think countering Chinese influence in the regions is a big, Herculean task. And I think no single nations like India would be, afford to counter the Chinese influence. I think what needs to be done is that we need to be practical. And I think Indian economic competency and capability is not really at that level which would single-handedly counter the Chinese capability. We need a coordinations not only among the island countries in order to exert influence of India, but also we need a much more concentrated coordination among the Quad countries, particularly with the US, which has a much more specified and focused Pacific Island strategy. So therefore, I think if we talk about US under Biden administration's policy, there are US aid, grants which is there for many countries in the Pacific Island countries, and I think these are not really small grants. These are like 3.25 million, in capacity building exercises Americans under their Pacific Island strategy they are providing. And today there is a summit level engagement. The US is engaged with the regions, and I think these are complementing India's outlook towards regions. So therefore, India is not really competent enough to single-handedly counter the Chinese influence. I think the way China's adventure towards towards Taiwan, and including the Pacific Islands countries are, moving forward. And I think there is a need for India to think much more clearly in terms of collaborating with the other countries in the regions.
Now, Dr. Panda, stay with us on the line, because to add to what you were alluding to earlier, in another development, Papua New Guinea has also signed a new defense pact with the United States. You had US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, him arriving in Port Moresby for the ceremony in place of President Joe Biden. Although before the signing, Blinken met with other leaders, including New Zealand's Prime Minister Chris Hipkins. The deal gives the US access to the country's ports and airfields as Washington tries to counter Chinese influence in the region. Dr. Panda, why is this security deal between the United States and Papua New Guinea important?
I think the key is the Taiwan issue. If you see the way the Chinese strategy is expanding towards not only the cross-strait regions, but also towards the Pacific Island regions, I think that is definitely the most important motivating factor why there is a resurgence in the American strategy. Second, I think this security agreement between US and the Papua New Guinea is a part of the US Pacific Island Summit, which was planned in September 2022. And I think there has been a lot has been discussed how the Americans should be engaged and invested in the regions. So therefore, this is a continuation of both the China factor and also to enhance the American strategy in the regions.
You talk about American involvement in the region. You had President Biden who had to cancel his trip last minute to concentrate on arguably domestic internal politics in the United States. I'm wondering what is the message that sends to the Pacific Islands?
Of course, that would not really, bode well among the Pacific Island countries, because when Chinese President Xi Jinping has visited in the regions earlier, and China has a much more concentrated and investment oriented strategy towards the Pacific Island countries. So Biden not visiting to the region, to the country, is a huge setback for the American, posturing in the regions and American outreach and image towards the regions. So therefore, this is definitely would not be positively taken. But again, I think the way the American strategy is evolving, there are a lot to positively draw upon for India, for many Pacific Island countries. And I think if you see, there are official level mechanisms between US and the Pacific Island countries. There are leadership summit, national security advisor level, visits are happening. So that's a positive indications. But you are right. I think Biden not visiting the regions is a huge setback for the American posturing and image in the regions.
Dr. Panda, we're talking about China looming large in the region, especially when it comes to the Pacific Islands. Let's talk about Australia and its ally, the United States. And let's look at the security deal that China signed with the Solomon Islands last year. And today you have Papua New Guinea signing this defense cooperation agreement with Washington. I'm just wondering if the Pacific Island nations themselves are united when it comes to resisting Chinese influence.
Certainly, they are not united. They would like to see their economic and strategic opportunities. Let's be very clear that in the Pacific Island countries need better investment. They need better connect with the rest of the world, and particularly they need better connect with the major economies in the world. So therefore, they would welcome the Chinese investment, Chinese planning in the regions, as well as they would also welcome the American involvement, American strategy, including the other Quad or Indo-Pacific countries. So therefore, I think for the Pacific Island countries, these are a period of opportunity, and therefore they would like to see as much the Chinese investment coming and the other Quad countries, including the other Indo-Pacific countries, reaching to them. India needs to be very mindful, because the way the Chinese are looking at Taiwan issue, the way the Chinese are looking at the Pacific Island countries, it's not really good for India's soft power and economic diplomacy in the regions. So therefore, I think India needs to really, have a very clear-cut strategy in terms of strategic engagement, political engagement, and be invested in the regions along with the other Quad countries, partnering with the Quad countries, particularly with the US. So therefore, PM Modi visiting along with the Secretary of State Blinken visiting at the same time is a welcomed initiative, welcome development for India-US ties, particularly when India-US are having a much more collaborative efforts how to enhance the partnership in the Indo-Pacific regions, particularly in the Pacific region. So this is definitely a welcome development, but a lot has to be done.
And I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the future. But for the time being, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today. Jagannath Panda, head of the Stockholm Center for South Asian and Indo-Pacific Affairs. Thank you so much, sir.